Standing by is Quinton Klabon from the Institute for Reforming Government. You can go to reforminggovernment.org to find the information we are going to be sharing with you. I've also posted this on my social media to try to get it dispersed as far and wide as possible. This is information on the spending questions on these upcoming ballots on the April 7th election. Quinton, thanks for joining me on the program.
Thanks for having me. Excited to talk about it.
This is a one-stop shop tool to understand the school referenda. And I mean, I'm looking at this and I'm like, I didn't even know some of these towns existed. There are so many spending questions. This is after the 400-year veto, jacked our property taxes. Mine went up 17%. Some people were getting 26% increases. And the school districts are coming back at taxpayers for even more, typically permanently ongoing increases in spending. So what did you mean to do with this? How can people use this tool to best understand these spending questions?
Yeah, you have it exactly right. I think a lot of times we think about the federal government, we need to start thinking about local government and how much that costs and how effective that is. These school referenda are really expensive. $573 million on the ballot this spring, just for operating dollars, just for the dollars to keep schools running, and then another $509 million for renovations on school buildings. So we're talking $1 billion is on the ballot across Wisconsin, and these are the kind of things that even if it is a district all the way across the state, it's going to affect you because of the way school funding works. You're going to be putting in your income tax dollars, and you're going to be sending it to other districts. So whenever these votes are really, really important, and there wasn't a one-stop shop. It's impossible to find. There's not even really good news coverage of a lot of these. Never. So if you search IRG referendum tool, it's going to be the first thing that pops up. We put them all in one place. We're going to tell you how much it is. We're going to tell you how many students they've lost over the last few years, how many staff they've added over the last few years, and what you can expect going forward.
So that's always missing. So number one, you're correct. There's never coverage on this, ever. If there's a spending question, good luck. The only information you're going to get is from the PR firm or the consultant firm hired by the school to sell this to you, which shouldn't even be legal. But they hire these marketing firms, these PR firms and consultants to push this so that you vote yes. But here's what they never tell you. They never tell you what the actual costs are ongoing. They never tell you how much in one-time spending they've used for in the thing about operating referenda. There's tons of one-time spending that they have used to artificially increase the cost to continue. They never tell you how many students have left. They never tell you how many staff have been hired, and they never tell you which staff have been hired for what. And that's what this does. It tells you, hey, here's one-time COVID money that they've used to artificially increase the floor of spending. And now they want more money, even though they should have never used the one-time dollars in the first place for operating expenses, et cetera.
You're exactly right. So, a lot of people can think of it like a business. If your customer base is great and growing, you have more revenue, you can hire more people. If business is down, it stinks, but you might have to lay off some people. During the pandemic, a lot of money came from the federal government. One-time money came from the government to, help keep schools running. Businesses got helped out as well. A whole bunch of places got helped out. But everywhere else, that money stopped. A lot of school districts across Wisconsin are like, we've actually grown accustomed to having all of those staff, even though we've lost 50 students, 100 students, thousands of students, and that the money just doesn't work. And so they're going to voters to say, hey, before we've made the tough decisions, we're going to ask you to make a tough decision. And that's really difficult on taxpayers. I think there are a couple I really, really want to talk about. When it comes to kind of confronting, losing students, Wisconsin lost 14,000 students in public schools this year across the state. It's an insane number. There's a district called Winter in rural Sawyer County, Northwest. I do feel bad, that they're shrinking. They got 186 kids in the entire district at this point. They have a $2 million referendum. Let's just round up to 200 kids. $2 million a year divided by 200 kids, Vicki, is $10,000 extra per student. That's like they're going to have like Milwaukee public school spending in winter. And like, obviously, instead of, making tough decisions, maybe it's merging the district, maybe it's unfortunately laying off a couple of staff and making the money work. They're asking taxpayers to put $247 extra dollars on a $100,000 home, instead of making those tough decisions. And that's just brutal. $10,000 a student extra on top of what they're getting now in referendum dollars.
There's massive referenda out there that just actually blow my mind. And some of these capital spending ones, which we can talk about, I want to focus mostly on operating expenses because you'll never unburden yourself from those. Those are permanent increases. So these are permanent increases. But there's massive COVID money, massive amounts of COVID money, including in some districts that you wouldn't expect to get that much COVID money, some small districts, but bigger districts, when you've got $11 million in COVID money and you use that for your operating expenses, that you just artificially increased the floor of spending by $11 million a year. And now you're begging. I'm talking about Appleton. This is what it just popped out off your list. And they're down 1,000 students, almost 1,100 students. But they spent $11 million they shouldn't have spent for operating expenses. And they added almost 200 staff members. Like, how do you do this? And then you're coming back and you're begging for a $60 million, quote, operating revenue referendum. That's nuts. But this is repeated throughout big districts, little districts, medium-sized districts. I mean, virtually no one on your list has actually added students.
Basically 68 out of 72 counties lost students this year. So we're not growing anywhere. That's a huge problem. We need to attract businesses and families to Wisconsin. But until that happens, that's going to take a little bit of time. Until that happens, the tough decisions need to be made. You pointed out Appleton. When you go to, if you search IRG referendum tool, if people go to that website, we're going to have how much temporary money from the government schools put toward ongoing costs. So if you have temporary money, you want to, maybe buy some air conditioning. You want to pay for some tutors. You maybe want to replace your textbooks. That's one-time spending from one-time money. Instead, what a lot of districts did, and Appleton did it to the tune of $10.5 million, is paying those ongoing salaries with one-time money. And now we're in trouble. And like you said, this is happening all across the state to varying degrees. Glendale, River Hills, it's happening all across the state.
And then you look at districts that are not huge, like Sauk Prairie. Sauk Prairie has a $22 million operating referendum, and they've got a $68 million capital referendum for new buildings. They lost 175 students. They lost students. Why do they need $22 million for ongoing expenses? And why do they need new buildings? No, the answer, of course, is you don't need that. So, and this is, again, it's repeated everywhere. Here's Watertown, $22 million spending referendum, down 500 students. We already mentioned Appleton. And I'm just cruising through your list here. Here's Whitefish Bay wants $135 million for buildings. They lost 50 students. Come on. But they don't tell you this in the press. So you have to go to this tool. You'll see that one-time COVID money. You'll see how many students are lost. You'll see how many staff were added, and then you'll see what the demand is, what the ask is from the taxpayer. And it should make you, in most of these cases, scratch your head and go, yeah, this doesn't make sense to me.
And this is not going to change either. So that, like you said, some of these are like genuinely permanent. Genuinely, you will be paying this forever. I live in Milwaukee. For all you listeners, I live in Milwaukee. I am permanently paying a lot of extra money to make sure that to give money to the district. And then a lot of these are operating and they come right back, even though you're losing 2, 3, 5% of your students every single year. Yeah, it makes sense. Every year, when you're at work, you want to raise to keep up with inflation. That totally makes sense. But when you're a business and you're losing, at a certain point, inflation doesn't really matter. You actually are lowering the expense of providing an education. And unfortunately, we're seeing districts, not want to do that. Our public services should be really efficient. We should be giving kids the best education in America. And, if we're treating schools like jobs programs, or, if we're not willing to just have those tough conversations about what needs to happen in a school district, it's not looking good out there.
Gee, and I'm looking at these building referendum. I mean, not a single one makes sense. Not a single one. Here's another one in Howard Suamico. There's a huge district right there. They want $147 million and they're down 423 students. No, the answer is no. Your answer as a voter is no. And again, there isn't comprehensive coverage. You're not going to see this in the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel or any of the local papers because they're just not, it's not of interest. There's not enough reporters. So I won't blame them entirely. But this tool is giving more information with 3 data points than any coverage I have seen anywhere on any spending question, Quinton. 3 data points: one-time COVID dollars that were spent for operating, number of students who have either been added or lost, and 68 of 72 have lost students, and the number of additional staff that have either been hired or fired. That's it. Those 3 points are the points that people need to make a judgment. Does this make sense? If we're losing students, why am I paying more? If we're losing students, why do you want to build a new building? If anything you should be doing, you should be consolidating and you should be trying to attract new families to our area. And that's not happening. And it's not getting covered in any way that makes sense. All you get is the glossy consultant brochure saying, give us more money or else we're going to cut your kid's band or we'll cut cheerleading. You know, that's what they do to you. They threaten you with your kid's happiness.
Yeah, the legislature has caused us to not be able to teach math as opposed to having, lots of mental health consultants or another paraprofessional in the classroom or all these other things. Again, these are decisions that taxpayers have to make. I definitely would encourage them to use this tool. Talk to their local superintendent and say, hey, can you square these things? Like, if we are losing students, where's all this money going and why are we asking for more? I think those are very, very reasonable questions, and we have the key points of information that you need to ask those questions well.
Absolutely true. And if anything, these 3 points of information should lead you to a yes or a no decision very, very easily if you have any amount of logic. My last thing on this is on these building spending questions, so the capital expenditure questions. And I'd love to see an analysis of this. How many of these new buildings are LEED certified? How many of these new buildings have green mechanisms? How many of these new buildings are using ground source heat pumps instead of boilers or standard HVAC systems? How many of these buildings are climate change green wish list buildings that have been sought by the district rather than bare bones stuff that can get kids educated and make sure they've got a gymnasium, right? That's a question that nobody asks either. But I know based on the spending questions in my town, all of these damn things are all about sucking up to the climate change lobby.
First of all, I'll give you one. This is an insider term for all of you folks asking. If you ask if you're spending money on a new gym, they might say no. We're spending it on a multi-purpose space. Use the jargon, right? Oh no, we can use it for more than just a gym, whereas it's a gym. And then secondly, like you said, a lot of these are built as if these will be the same buildings going on for another 50, 75 years. That made sense, back in the baby boom era. Wow, we're just adding students across America. We need to be nimble. We need to have really nimble, affordable spaces because, unfortunately, we're probably going to shrink population for a little bit longer. And if we're spending all of these massive, like you said, massive green stuff, massively expensive, massive gymnasiums, when we need to actually be adapting and nimble and making sure that we're not throwing a bunch of money away, it's a really, really difficult position to put Wisconsinites in. So
again, reforminggovernment.org or just search IRG, Institute for Reforming Government, IRG referendum tool, and you're going to see it. And you can also go to my Facebook page because I have great content there too. Quinton Klabon, thank you. And thanks IRG for doing this tool because it's hugely helpful.
Yep, putting the taxpayers first at IRG. Thanks.
Good to have you. And we'll take a quick break on the Vicki McKenna Show.